I don't quite look like Pandora, nor do I quite talk like Pandora, but we will spend some interesting time on the new developments in NFC. As we look towards the October 2015 deadline for EMV, a lot of people are looking at upgrading their terminals to allow chip transactions. And of course, NFC is the use of that chip in a more what we would look like a contactless or you don't dip the chip, right? You tap and go environment. So this connection between what's happening at the point of sale for cards and what's happening with mobile is interesting as you look at upgrading your point of sale. So my background, my name's Jacqueline Chilton. I have my own consulting firm, Muration Group. I've been in consulting, in strategy consulting since '93, and in payments for 15 years. And so really help clients understand payments problems. I can't really specify because clients tend to have very unique and very different problems. But if it's a payments problems, I help them break it down, research it, and figure it out. I also happen to own 3 businesses in the Napa Valley, which is where I live. They're often more interesting than any of the client work that I do because I own a pizza place, a deli, and most people want to talk about the pizza place. So as we go through this, I may have some small business examples, but really I use that as an example to say merchants are different. So while we talk about having a merchant-focused conference and we talk about mobile and merchants, your unique environment is yours, and how you want your customers to go through the system and be serviced by payments is really unique to how your business operates and what you want from your customer experience. So let's talk about the point of sale. We're going to start with the concept of NFC on the phone, right? Using the phone and the secure element. This was sort of the origins of NFC mobile payments. So this is the traditional look at how it would work with a phone with the secure element. And the only reason I show this, here's your, oh, sorry, I advanced and pointed at the same time. Oh, all right, forget that. You can see in the middle, if I point, that there is a secure element. And the interesting piece about that secure element is it's a very safe place to put a payment credential. It's a secret spot locked down by the handset manufacturer that has very fancy cryptographic keys that can be used to unlock it, put a payment card information in there, lock it up again, and then that payment card is no longer accessible by any other app on the phone. So it's considered a very safe place. You'll hear all of your risk management people really like this spot for putting a credit card. And once you've got the credit card information there, you can use it exactly like it was a chip on a card. So your phone has now become enabled to act like a chip card at the point of sale. The problem with this model is these are all the people it takes to make that credit card information get to that secure element. You don't really have to follow the flow diagram, you just have to appreciate that's complicated, right? And the problem is that the handset manufacturers, the MNOs or cellular telco companies, right, all want a piece or rent for figuring out how to get the credit card information onto the secure element. They expect to be a part of the ecosystem of an NFC mobile wallet that uses their secure element. One of the reasons is it takes effort for them to unlock the secure element, put the card information in there, and secure it back up again. So that's usually the role of the trusted service manager, somebody that's trusted in the middle by the MNO and by the bank, right, to allow that process to happen. They're the ones that put the confidential card information into the secure element, right? It's usually done by a trusted service manager. You can see that this complicated process has ended up in the US causing us to have very few bank-led mobile wallets. In other countries, banks have partnered with a telco and gone to market. But in the US, that hasn't happened. And you know, it really did create absolutely no progress on this front for a long time. What we got out of it was soft card or ISIS. The telco said, well, we're not waiting any longer for the banks, right? If the banks aren't going to lead us through this process and pay us for rent on the secure element, we're going to use it for ourselves. They got together a joint venture of telcos and created what was ISIS. Who could have imagined when they picked that name, right? What would have happened? Poor guys. I just feel for the marketing department so much as they're faced with this world calamity and trying to figure out what to do for their brand. But anyway, they've come up with SoftCard as their new name. It is still the telco joint venture, and they use the secure element because they have access to it and they don't have to pay anybody rent. And what they do is they provision a consumer's card from the bank into the secure element, and you can make a tap and go payment at the point of sale. Now, they've been alone out there pushing this uphill for a very long time. And so we're going to talk about a few of the major announcements that have made their lives a lot better. First of all, the EMV liability shift of next year will encourage merchants to change the point of sale to allow for chip. Chip is what they like, as long as you go contactless chip and can tap and go. That enables their solution. So that ecosystem changing is helping out SoftCard. The other thing that's happened that you all know about that we'll talk about in a couple of slides is Apple Pay. Big announcement, all about NFC at the moment. Helps these guys out enormously with the amount of marketing that's coming along with that announcement. So, we have few NFC mobile wallets partly because of this argument between telcos and banks. The other piece of it is merchants are like, what are you two arguing about? There are customers. So of course we have a third party that plays in this group, which is as the banks and the telcos try to decide who's paying who for NFC payments, the merchant's like, well, wait a minute, what about us? And so they are also not championing this particular business model. So another thing that's happened recently, fairly recently, is this concept of host card emulation, or HCE. And you'll have heard big noise about it with the KitKat Google Wallet announcement. And so what is HCE? It's essentially pretending that you got access to the secure element and acting like a chip card transaction without actually using that secret locked space that the telcos control. So Google has found a way to put an app on the phone wherever there's a KitKat phone, right, enabled phone, and to get to the NFC capability of that phone without having any payment credentials on the phone. They're just faking it out, and so the point of sale terminal will think it just got an NFC transaction. It'll transact like a chip card tapping and going at the point of sale, but they don't actually have access to the secure element, and there's no payment information on your phone, okay? And so they've done this because then they don't have to have agreements with all the chip secure element owners about how we're going to provision and how we're going to pay for the privilege of being on that secure element. And this is exciting for a bunch of different people who now see opportunities to not have to work through these relationships of the secure element to get to the NFC capabilities on the phone. So this is what changes. It's obviously a much simpler ecosystem. We cut out a whole bunch of boxes. I just used the diagram to look complicated, right? And then it's gotten simpler. So the Google Wallet, the challenge they're facing, of course, is the number of phones that actually are NFC enabled. And so they need to still figure out how to encourage the handset manufacturers to provide NFC into market. But to the extent that any of you had an Android phone, you may have noticed you got the KitKat upgrade and you suddenly had Google Wallet. And if you had NFC on your phone, you were suddenly encouraged to use your Google Wallet that used to be an online account and enable it onto your phone right away. It was sort of a forced operating system update that appeared for a bunch of people that had the right phone or tablet. So Google has probably about 20 million, maybe 20 million, we're not quite sure, maybe 15 million of these wallets up and running. And the problem, of course, is people don't know where to use them, and some people didn't know they were getting the wallet. They may have used it online, but never used Google Wallet on their phone. So it wasn't necessarily conscious choice that a bunch of people now are enabled with the Google Wallet. But as NFC increases, as the concept of going and tapping and paying improves, this wallet is enabled to take advantage. And of course, we talk about Apple Pay. Great for momentum in this side of the business, right? Absolutely noisy announcement, fabulous marketing. Everybody with an iPhone 6 is going to be hugely excited about coming out and trying to find out where they can use Apple Pay. Again, not great for merchants, and necessarily. It will be for those that they have a lot of iPhone 6 customers, but no card information shared with the merchant. So right there, you have to figure out with Apple how you're going to find out the information that you need on your customer. So how is loyalty going to play with this, right? And that's sort of not developed. It was very much an Apple announcement. The one thing I will say, I predicted a long time ago when we would tap and pay in the US, because other countries, of course, are a bit ahead of us on some of this. And I said, much to everyone's chagrin, I said I couldn't actually make a prediction. Of course, I'm a consultant, so I don't have to go on record for anything. But I would say that 5 years after Apple Pay puts a chip on the phone, that's when we'll all be ready to tap and go. And so while I don't know that it will be the Apple phone you will use to do it, I think that they don't do things without expecting change, right? They didn't go into iTunes and not affect the music market. They don't, put things on the phone like the camera and not affect the camera business. So, we know we have to watch this, whether it actually comes into your store anytime soon or not. Important announcement for what it's going to do about the ecosystem and what they believe is the future of payments. Just because their consumer people are a lot smarter than I am, so I figured once they started, we were on the path. I just mostly put this in there because it's cool, but it actually gains access. So while there are 800 million iTunes accounts, right, that isn't the same as the count of iPhone 6s able to use Apple Pay. What they do with the watch is to provide an NFC avenue for people that don't have the iPhone 6 but have an iPhone 4 or 5 and can now use their watch to make payments. So you got about 200 million people with the other sets of phones that can buy a watch and make NFC payments on their iTunes account. Pretty cool, assuming that payment is accepted at the point of sale. And honestly, when 800 million people that have Apple iTunes accounts go to have some vehicle to use it at your point of sale, a whole bunch of merchants are going to be like, okay, here we go, right? I'll accept that. Because they're usually fairly affluent, fairly regular, habitual users of consumers, right? They're regular consumers of a lot of different products, and if they meet or fit your customer base, that's MIT in my new language, but if they fit or meet your customer base, you're going to want these customers pretty soon. So something to watch. Wearables, Catherine made the joke, Johnson from the ACT Canada made the joke yesterday of wait till we have dentures, right? You put the chip in the denture and you come up. We have Google Glass, so people can't actually talk to you because they're busy. But there's lots of things happening around wearables that will be interesting at the point of sale, because of course when you get into the store, you have to accept it. Right? And it is the choice of the merchant whether this stuff works or not. So what actually is driving point-of-sale mobile payments? Coffee. Most mobile payments, the consumer experience today with mobile payments is buying coffee. Starbucks is the number one place where actual mobile payments is happening. And so the reason is it's an everyday spend. It's a very merchant-centric. The merchant has the brand that's appropriate for having their own app, and they have gift cards that people actually use and don't give to someone else that sit around for a year. So they're actually driving a better experience with their mobile app, and they're using barcodes, so not NFC. It'll be interesting to see when Starbucks decides if they're going to use HCE to get to the chip and do chip transactions, but they don't need to, really. They're already there. So there's lots of different ways to pay beyond NFC. We really don't have time to go through them all, but they've been mentioned today. We also had Target speak very specifically about the currency application, also not at this time on NFC, partly because of this whole argument of who pays for access to that secure element when you go NFC. And so HCE might give them a way to get around that problem, but for now, QR codes are going to do them just fine. And I still like you don't need your wallet, you don't need anything. You walk in with your PayPal information and you go to the point of sale. Now this hasn't taken off because again, it's a new vendor at the point of sale. And merchants have to actually want to work with PayPal, which means they have to give them a good rate and a good deal. But think about what's next, right? Will we really be tapping and going, or will we just be walking in and identifying ourselves from something in our heads? So I like to make the point that every merchant environment is different. My deli is different than the pizza place, is different than Coca-Cola way of selling things through retailers, is different than a FedEx store where you're getting Kinkos and copies, right? And is also different than physical garment retail, where you want a more intimate, probably more beacon-enabled experience. So you need to know if you have the brand to warrant an app or your own wallet experience, right? If you don't have the brand that's going to pull people, you need to be part of someone else's brand. You need to know how immediate do they need payment. Is tap and go really useful? In our deli environment where you're watching someone make your sandwich, faster payment is not the point, right? The slower we can make the payment, the less time they're spending looking at the lady making the sandwich, right? And staring down at her going, make it faster, make it faster. So you have to think of the logistics, the environment that you're going into, and how important tap and go payments really are. And so lastly, we also talk about what's beyond the payment piece. There are a lot of interesting things happening in terms of dual capability. And that ability of your mobile phone to just not make payment. Now, we talked about loyalty, right? There was a lot of conversation in the previous panel, so I won't go there. But what about having your campus ID or your building ID or your campus prepaid program for a child, right? Having their wallet and their spending limit and their ability to go to the campus bookstore all on your mobile phone, right? And all enabled through that payment capability. So there's this bigger vision of what can happen with NFC specifically, and we'll get back sort of to NFC and beyond payments. Think about this trip of the future. And I'm assuming, because they're working on it, that someday your driver's license will actually be on your phone. We don't yet have permission for that, but we know they're working on it. So say you have your driver's license and you tap and you use NFC to prove that you are who you are as you get to security. You can present your boarding pass already, right, on your phone, and you can tap in the future through NFC to make that happen or scan it the way they do today. You then make your taxi payment either through NFC or if you all use Uber, it's already behind the system already. And then you can go into your hotel, check in because you're geolocated as to showing up at your hotel. It will provision your key onto your phone, and you'll use the NFC capability to get into your room. You don't have to talk to anybody. And those of you that have been delayed 3 hours and get in at 1 o'clock in the morning know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Don't want to talk to a soul, just want to get in that room. And then, of course, the next day you have a meeting at some new building. They provision through onto your phone the ability to get through security. You tap your phone, you go in, and you're in your office building for that meeting. So anyway, this is sort of, there's also a bunch of stuff around advertising, NFC advertising that can be added to this, and a whole bunch around the actual interaction through stores that other speakers have talked to. But this is sort of the NFC vision of having everything available to you through your mobile device.